you need to know about the structure of a synovial joint. So we're going to spend a bit of time looking at what a synovial joint is, how we might label it if we're asked to do that, and then we need to understand the function of all the different parts of the synovial joint, and particularly how it can help to prevent injury. So quite a bit here, so let's make a start. First of all, we need to talk about what a synovial joint is. So in very simple terms, a synovial joint is a joint which allows freedom of movement. So we talk about synovial joints as being freely movable joints, and if you can remember that, you use that in an answer, you'll be absolutely fine. A little bit more detail then, you might say that a synovial joint is a type of joint found in areas where movement takes place. It allows for a wide range of movement, so that helps with your understanding. A freely movable joint is fine as well. Okay, so now we have to label the parts of the synovial joint, and you've got your word bank down here, so you might want to spend a bit of time, as I've done in previous videos. Just pause the video when you're ready to and see if you can label up the points that you can see on the diagram. So if we look at this one here, I appreciate it's a little bit small, we'll make it a bigger for you. Is this blue liquid in here is referred to as the synovial fluid, and that is in between the joints there. And we'll look at what the role of each of these are in a minute, but just for now, let's make sure we've got the labeling right. So this is synovial fluid. The next one then is the bursa. Sometimes you might hear it described or pronounced as bursae, but bursa is what I say, and that's this cushioning bit going on here, and again I'll explain exactly what that is in a little bit. The next one is this purple you can see on both sides here. So the purple bit here is the joint capsule, and then if we go over onto the other side, hopefully you've got this is both sides, both ends of the bone. That is the cartilage. And now quite distinct here, we've got the blue inside, which is a synovial fluid, but you've got a little membrane there, little line there, and that's called the synovial membrane. We'll see the function of that in a moment, and hopefully you recognize that this connective tissue here is connecting bone to bone, and you'll remember hopefully that bone to bone, connecting bone to bone, is ligaments. Okay, so now that we've done that, it's quite often that you're asked to label up a synovial joint like that, so it's important that you spend the time making sure that you know those key points. And if you're not asked to label one up, you might be asked to identify certain points on a diagram. So let's make a start looking at the synovial membrane, and you remember that's that little membrane there between the synovial fluid and the joint capsule, and now its role is to secrete synovial fluid into the joint capsule. So this blue stuff here is the synovial fluid, and it's secreted by the synovial membrane. Now on its own, it's quite difficult to describe exactly what it does to help to prevent injury, but when we look at it together with the synovial fluid, which you'll remember is inside here, we can see what it's doing, because the synovial fluid lubricates the joint, okay, makes it nice and oily, so there's lots of ability to move around, and it also reduces friction between the bones of the joint, so it's reducing the friction here between the bones. So synovial membrane has an important part to play because it secretes the synovial fluid, which lubricates the joint, reduces friction, and supplies nutrients to keep the joint healthy. Okay, so there's quite an important role there for it. Now the joint capsule, going back to the purple here, the joint capsule essentially keeps the joint stable and in place. So it provides some structural support, some stability, that's a nice word to use, and it keeps the synovial fluid in the joint cavity. Okay, that's the blue stuff there. So that's all contained by the joint capsule. Now the bursa, remember we said it was this cushiony object over here, and you can see where it's positioned. It's positioned between the muscle and the bones, and you've got tendon down here. So you've got tendon and muscles, then the bursa, then the bone. So its role, the bursa's role there, is to reduce friction between the muscles, the tendons and the bones, and provides cushioning and also shock absorbing. Moving on then, cartilage, you remember, is at the end of each of the bone, and the role of the cartilage is to absorb shock and to provide cushioning during movement. So it's a shock absorber, and it also provides a smooth surface at the end of the bone so that it reduces friction, so the bones don't rub against each other. So that's a key part of preventing injury. And then ligaments, you remember, bone to bone, linking bone to bone, they connect bone to bone and they provide stability around the joint, so we don't get dislocations of our joints. So You need to know and remember each of these key functions or parts of the synovial joint and what each of them do in relation to helping to prevent injury.